So I got a Dolmar saw PS 7300 that got some damage, needs to be rebuilt. Case is cracked right here, you can see. So basically it needs a full disassembly, cleaned up, put back together. This is pretty bent, but should have all the parts here. New case half, new tank, handle. Got the case half gasket, miscellaneous old parts. And a bunch of chains to sharpen. So just start taking it apart. Okay. Since these are really fragile, they're just cast aluminum with some magnets in it. I don't like to put a pulley on these things and pull them up because you can end up breaking some of these fins off or just marring them up and making them destroyed a little bit. So you hit the crank and you jar this just a little bit and it pops it loose. And then you just got to make sure that you get the key with it. This one's got an integrated key, so you don't have to worry about losing it. I was just pushing this one. So I just grabbed the case. Pull it. I figure out how the boot's come off here. Yeah, we'll get that later. It's off the side now. Bend that back. The cam's over here. Just bend this piece back. That's about it. Aside from assembling the chain right here. And this nice big old crack all the way through the whole half of the case. That's pushing it. Remember that goes. Have to look and make sure. Yeah, the new one does not have this metal piece in here, so we'll have to transfer that over. Nice that way. Oh. Get the band off. There, that was it. That's it. Let's get this all off here first then. Take it all off the window. Oh, knife. Come on. Get that out now. Take all of it. Got this old socket. Doesn't even have a size on it, or a brand, or anything. But I know I've got a zillion of this size. And that fits perfectly right there. So what I'll do is just mark 3 little notches, grind 3 notches so that this just sits right on there, and then I can attach it to an impact and zip it off. There. Made my own special adapter. Not paying 20 bucks or however much they want for that specialized tool to get this off. And I can use a old socket I paid 50 cents for. There we go. And then it also doubles as a reinstallation tool too. I like this style of worm gear a lot better than the one Steel makes with the little arm sticking out. The arm always wears down. This has an arm on each side. Even though it's nylon, it's still got twice as much. There's a V2 front oil pipe, or not pipe, pump. And there's the second line that goes in the tank on the backside, right there. And I'll get this out, move over the case out as well. There's a bushing gun in here as well that will need to come out. Easy to grab pliers. There's just pick up end and seal the case out. Alright, that's it for that. Take the cylinder and piston off and take the case out for it. There we go. Still looks really nice on the inside. Cross hatching is still there. Hasn't been used a whole lot. Well oiled. No scoring. There's a little bit of wash from where the piston rides, and the skirt of the piston here is not contacting the edge of the cylinder, but it's to be expected. Really good shape though. Ring still looks really good, just need to clean it up. A little bit of carbon deposits. And yeah, just clipped in there similar to Steel and Husqvarna. They got a clip without a grab part. A lot of the aftermarket ones have a piece you can grab and just pull them out. These ones you actually have to get like a pin behind it to push it out and pry at it. There we go. I got it started. It's going to go flying. Try not to lose it. Got super lucky. Landed right on the crankcase there. Set that aside. And then push out the other side. Nice. Now we see what's there we go. Far enough. Get that stuff together. Take the bearing out. Nice and smooth and still tight bearings. That's great. Gasket, we'll reuse it. This is a really low hour saw, so this gasket is not one of the stamped metal ones, but still very, very good condition. We'll hang on to it. Right. Ready to take it apart in half, except need to double check something here. Yeah, the new half did not come with this seal. So we're gonna see if we can get that seal out without destroying it so we can reuse it, but might have to buy a new one of those seals. Same with the other side. It depends. Depends on how well everything comes apart without getting destroyed. Look at me. Case bolts on the side. It's just really random on one side. Alright. That makes that easy. All the case bolts are nice and long, so don't have to remember which ones are which. And we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the new one. So Took out 6 on the old one. Means it should be ready to come apart. Let's see if it wants to split. Yep, there it goes. Splits a little bit without too much trouble. Wow, that's almost too easy. Not even gonna need a, yeah. Wow, that was ridiculously easy. Didn't even need a splitter for that. Okay. Whatever. I am going to get a new seal for this, though. That looks pretty hard, and it feels hard. I'm not confident that if you put this back together, it's going to seal properly, so better just get a new one. They're cheap enough. Same with this one. Let's see if this will pop out. Well, that one seems like it's in pretty good. This half is in there pretty tight, so need to use the actual splitting tool for this. Make sure we're in the right spots. That thing is in there, isn't it? That doesn't want to give at all. There it goes. You can see it separating a little bit from the seal. There. There we go. Nice original crank. Nice. Looks very good. And this is what we wanted to get off here, was nice cracked half here, so we can replace that. This bearing is probably, oh no, that bearing's toast. I don't know if you can hear it. There's something in there, either rough spots or some metal got into it, or I guess I don't have to worry about ruining the case half here. It's already ruined, so. Oh, you know what? These are screwed in. They got big, huge hex bushings on here. Interesting. All the steels are just pressed in. Let's see. Yep, it's that one. There it goes. Yeah, these are. That's pretty cool. They're just screwed in. All right. Thanks. Taking them out really easy. Gotta get this one pin. For some reason, this one pin is not in the new one, if it's even needed. All right. Starting to go. Goes. Look at that. That thing is smushed. Not quite straight anymore. See if I can straighten it out before I put it back into the new one. I'm not using it to put too much jam, but the fabric wants to do that, so this is good. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so much of that. So it should be easier. The crack goes right through it. There we go. All right. Everything is off of here, ready to be swapped to the new one. So the old tank gasket, actually in still pretty good condition, but we got a new one, so whatever. That goes into recycling pile. And there's the alcohol when you're done. You can see how gross it is. It gets a lot of the grease and stuff off and dissolves it into the water, or not water, the alcohol. But it makes wiping these off and cleaning them a lot easier. Before I put everything back together, I like to put some assembly lube on the bearings, both on the case halves and the crankshaft. Just ensures that when everything's starting up and you're breaking it back in for the first time from being dry, that you're not going to burn anything. So let's see what this camera's there. Same goes for these bearings. This one is the original half. It's not the new one, but since I cleaned it out and everything, it's pretty dry, so just throw a layer of assembly lube into the bearings and then don't have to worry about it. Also helps when reinstalling the crankshaft. You can get a little bit into the inside race and hopefully smushes in a little easier. And same with a little bit on the seal. First, I'm going to put the old seal back in here. That was from the other half that was broken. I just ever so gingerly pushed this out from the backside with a screwdriver and was able to salvage it. It actually looked like it was pretty good. I know I said that it looked a little stiff and should probably get replaced, but actually the rubber is pretty good where this spring is. I think it was just this dust lip is a little aged, but the actual sealing lip on the backside looks fine, so I'm going to reuse it. And then I've got a socket to push the seal in with. It's the exact same size as the seal outer diameter, so that when I push on it, I'm pushing on the strongest part, which is the outside. So don't want to be pushing on the inside at all. Let's get started. There. You want the seal in far enough that it isn't going to be hitting the whatever it is, the plate that goes over that with the clutch over that and the worm gear and everything that goes on here. But you want it to be not so far in that it's going to be contacting this bearing, and bearing's dry, there's nothing in it, but yeah, so looks pretty flush comparing to the other side that was factory done. That one looks like maybe it's a little more flush. And we have a little bit of room. It's hard to see camera angle. We have a little bit of room that we can go in a little bit further with this seal. That's about as far as I'm comfortable going with that. There's actually this side right here is stepped down from that right there. You can kind of see the step right there, and so it looks sunken on this side, but then it looks raised on that side. Almost looks like it's not in straight, but it is. I'm just trying to spin the bearing to get that lube between all the bearings and the race and everything, so that it just works its way in. It's pretty tacky stuff. It stays put really well, but at the same time doesn't. So this might be a little difficult to show. I'll try. Do it backwards from how I normally do it. I also normally take and put the crankshaft in the freezer, and it just being in the freezer shrinks the metal ever so slightly, so you can pull these in a lot easier. And sometimes you can just kind of tap them on the back and they go in. And actually that one looks like it might be going in. Yeah, it's not going to go all the way. Well, it's some of the way, not all the way. So we'll use the puller for that. The puller goes on here. And then, oh, I need the studs. Gotta put the studs back on there to use the tool for installing the crankshaft. Not sure if they had Loctite, but they were in there pretty good, and they also have remnants of what looks like some kind of sealant. But unlike steel, these actually, on the backside here, they're not open. Steel is open, and so you either have to seal them or just crank them down really tight. These ones, thankfully, aren't like that. But we're putting Loctite in it anyway, because you don't want these backing out from vibration while you're using it. That would be no bueno. Alright, now we're ready to use this fancy installer tool. If we can, we're gonna have to modify it. That's a bar. Yep, that just isn't gonna work. Right, that right there is stopping on the stud. There's, you know, 2 holes drilled, and they didn't finish drilling them out. So you can see how terribly that was drilled out from the backside here, but I'll go fix that quick. All right, now we're back. Modified it so it sits flush like it's supposed to. connects to the crankshaft where the clutch would be, and then it pulls it through. Almost there. Any project where you modify less than 3 of your tools is a pretty dull project. So I can show this one in a minute. Jam here. Just hold the rod so that it pinches to go down on the case. Because the crankshaft has to spin, otherwise it'll just disconnect itself from the tool. But the rod has to stay up so that it stays between these 2 points here. And we are about there. I don't want to go too far. Then you'll start pushing your bearing out with the crankshaft. And get off. Pull the crankshaft while you crack this tool off. Very firmly. And get the sleeve on. And double check that I didn't push it in too far. Doesn't sound like it. It is really close, but it's not rubbing on anything, which is good. That's the main thing. I might move it out just a smidge though. I like having a little bit of heat expansion space. Probably super difficult to tell on camera, but maybe right here. Catch the light that's between there. A little bit more space. Just enough to allow for some heat expansion without it binding or rubbing or whatever. Actually, you know what I'm missing from the old one? It's this alignment pin. Let's see if I can pull that out, because the new one didn't come with one. Alright, got the old pin out. Just putting it into the new case. I don't remember how far in it was, but whatever. It'll average out on the other half. So now, you know what? Cut that right now. Just so it doesn't get in my way. There. It's meant to be so that these are the right distance apart, but when you install it, but you got an alignment pin right there, and then you got a bolt hole right there. The tops of this thing can't be in the wrong spot. They have to go in the right place, so I'm not going to worry about it. This was the half that just slid right off before, so I'm hoping that on this one it just slides right on. Just got to line up the pin that's right on this side here with the gasket and the case half. There it goes. The pin lined up on that side, like it is. And then wiggle it down. But make sure we don't lose some of the gasket. Check that everything's going together quick before doing a final push. Check it again. And then this one is the one I said it has a bolt to align that part of the gasket, so I'm going to put one in. Get get that started. And it goes on the other side. What am I doing? There. And I'll take it down to zero. There. And they made contact. Make sure that the crank doesn't touch on the other side. They should have about equal distance. Pretty dang close. Right in the middle. I don't hear anything grinding. Looks like it's sealed all the way around. I don't see any pinches, so start putting some bolts in it. Okay, and I'll tighten those down. And then cut off the excess gasket there, and then assemble the rest. I purposely go slow in cutting these off because, one, I want it to be super flush, so when you put the cylinder gasket on here, everything seals properly, but two, I don't want to tug at this gasket in such a way that it will tear down between the seam of the two case halves. So I just kind of rock this back and forth really slowly until it slowly cuts its way through. Start putting the cylinder and piston and everything back on. Same thing, assembly lube on the cage bearing here, needle bearing. Just helps it stay lubricated until all the two-stroke oil makes its way to all the nooks and crannies on the inside of the engine. Since everything's starting dry, clips on the side, it's not on the side, so push them to the side. Get started first. Oh yeah, these are tough ones. You can't tell, I'm not very good at this part. I can never get the socket method to work. There we go. 90% of the way there, and then you just give it a little nudge and it clips in. Everything's good to go. Get the cylinder. Thankfully, these gaskets are the kind that actually slide over the piston. Sometimes these gaskets don't, especially like those metal form ones on steels. You have to put the gasket on first before you put the piston on. But I lucked out here. So I'm just trying to line up the pin with the gap as I hold it and slide the cylinder over it. You usually get like the back side and then kind of pinch the front side like that, and then it just slides over. So, but I'm also going to put some two-stroke on that first. There. I guess what you'd call a short block is all together. At this point, you can do a compression test. Actually, I might do that. Just see where we stand. You can put the nut back onto the flywheel and then use a drill to spin the flywheel. Let's do that. And that's how you compression test it without actually having anything together. So that's pretty good. That's just under 160. Just call it 160. That's really good. Everything looks good. On this side, at least. And I just want to make sure that that stopper moves, and it's not stuck. Looks like it moves. I don't think it needs anything, so I'll just put it back together. Put the intake and air filter stuff back on. And the way I remembered it is this is the throttle, and the throttle pulls down, and so this has to be the top. And this was on the back side, since I know the throttle looped around like this. So this was to the air filter on the front, and this is the boot from the carburetor into the intake of the cylinder over there. And then you know which way this goes because this is a guide for the throttle linkage. It comes up there. And there's kind of only one way it can go. This has a slight bend in it, so you can kind of get an idea of where it's supposed to go, as well as this piece fits into that plastic, I don't know, housing or whatever this whole thing sat in. Assemble a couple random things here, like these bushings / mounts. So we do have a new one of these on this handle, and I think I'm just going to use that instead of trying to disconnect and move everything around. So we did. Band sometimes gets in the way, but nothing you can do about it. You got to have it on there. You could disconnect the band completely, but I typically don't like to do that because it's more of a pain to get it started again than it is to just deal with it when you're putting the thing on. I don't know what's holding it up here. This band is not in the way. Let's just take it off. Against my better judgment. And this is why they're difficult. They got this tiny little backing nut that has to sit right in here. And you got to hold that thing while getting it started again. But getting this intake boot on is also a pain in the butt. There. Now, let's get this right. What do you got? Listen to do. There. All right, now it's the right spot. There. Cool. I'm not sure if those were the right ones, but for now we'll leave them in there. These ones went here, but the cover went on top of that, so I will leave these off until we get the cover on. So before we can put the handle and throttle and fuel line back on there, we have to get all the electronics hooked up again because they go under here. They route through here and connect here and stuff, and that's all going to be covered once that handle's in the way. Ask me how I know. So we got that. This set down here, and this set here down or in here. Let's find out what's the register. Once I roll it down, because you're not sure, and also where to sit a little more correctly to figure out how this goes down. Right, like that. And then it's going to fit through here. What we do is there was a pinch last time, so there's a pinch there, a pinch there. So this probably And like that, sits down, and then there. And the bolt holes line up. Hard to see in the camera, but everything's back where it was. Same pinch lines, same, the way the wire was trained and all that. So. And we're good. Just pushing those back down. Make sure they're in the same spot. And these were the two wires for the shutoff. And they went into this bushing, and then this bushing sits right in there. And then the handle, sits right here. And so they'll butt up against the handle right on the back side. So set up right like that. And then they connect to the switch like that. So now that we have our electronics installed, we can go put the handle on. All right, first things first, get some stuff situated and started, and then we put that bushing over here to hold that in. But want to make sure we're feeding the throttle linkage correctly down at the bottom here. Make sure we connect the switches and we feed the fuel line up and through on the other side. And it looks like the throttle cable will go below these switch wires once everything is put together. I'm pulling up on it right now, which is raising the throttle cable, but it looks like it sits below them. Try to keep you in the shot so you can see what I'm doing, but this is kind of tedious. And I need to have light, so trying to get this throttle cable here into that guide there, and this black part has to come with it up inside from the bottom, so kind of delicate and at the same time not. If I can just grab it though. May have got it. Oh, started, it's not all the way yet. There. Now it's all the way up in that guide. Now I gotta make sure it's still in the right spots on the back here, because sometimes it can pop out from the handle as well. You can almost kind of feel it with your finger if you know. If you look at it before you put it together, you can kind of feel where it's supposed to be. So let's see here. May have come disconnected though. Hard to get this on camera, but I'm going to show it while I have it here, and then I'm going to fix it off camera. But let's see. Here is that. The camera won't focus on it. This is the black wire that's over the throttle cable linkage. This right at the tip of the pliers here is where it's supposed to be. There's a little pocket right there it's supposed to sit in. So once it sits in there, then everything gets pulled tight and it works the way it's supposed to. It's actually pretty easy to get it with this needle nose pliers here off camera when you have the room and stuff to do it. It's hard to do on camera, but then you can see it pulls the throttle the way it's supposed to. Yeah, put this back. I tried bending it straight again. Couldn't really do that. I don't know what connects to this. So I don't know how important it is, but put it back anyway. There. All right, set the lash on that. Try to show this, but this is just some packaging plastic, and I like this because this is where it was a tap, and that fits between the fins, and then on the two sides here it spaces out the ends of the coil. So what you do is, that's where you want it to be, and that's touching, but you tighten the screws down with it backed off. Then you move this into position, set the plastic in, loosen the screw, let it contact, make sure that this is still in the right spot, and see it grab now. Tighten the screws back down. Double check it by hand. And then rotate this out of the way, take the plastic out, and then there. You have a ridiculously close contact that isn't actually contacting. So, and then the sound, the whooshing sound you hear is the compression in the cylinder. I'm going to put the oil pickup back in there. Before I do, I like to, on most rubber things, at least put, this is not this specific brand, but the faucet grease, and this is high temperature faucet grease, so it's like 500 degrees or something. But what it does is it helps keep the rubber from drying out as quickly, and also helps it seal better and makes installation easier. Everything just kind of slides in. I use it on pretty much everything that's rubber, on cars, chainsaws, faucets. Like it's, it says faucet grease, but I've used it on engines and everything for years and never had issues. But this just pushes down into that slot down there, which is kind of tight. Hard to show that and do it at the same time, but it sits right down in there. And this is part of the pickup for the oil pump. This goes into the tube we just put in, and again I put some grease on there. Pretty much anything that slides into rubber or rubber slides into metal or whatever, just make sure you got some grease on it. Goes together easier, lasts a little longer, seals a little better. And then same thing for the oil pump. We'll take and put some grease on that as well. And on the other half that goes to the other side. Make sure you set this down first. This goes behind the pump, and it just sits here and pushes oil into this little channel, and then it spills out onto the bar. And a lot of times, a lot of manufacturers of chainsaws, there's no connector on this part. The pump just smashes onto it with this flat surface. Steels do that, Husqvarnas do that, everything. But there is this that needs to go in there for that part of the pickup. You got to rotate it right, get the bolt holes lined up. All right. So I goofed. These two bolts that go here, I actually used them on the back side of the handle to hold the carb housing to the case. So I got to take the handle off to get those two bolts out to use here, because they're the short ones. They're not the medium-sized ones. Like these are some medium ones, or here's another one. So lesson learned. It happens. Can't forget the little washer that went over the seal. It's really just to protect that dust lip. The washer that went over that, probably not directional. Sometimes they have a like form to them. There's a bevel side or something. This one's just flat, so it doesn't matter. But and then we put the clutch back on. This side says top. That really it means out, but as you're looking at it like it's sitting on the bench, this is up or top. So now we get that special tool I made wherever I set that. This guy. It doesn't need to be super tight, but tight enough that it doesn't want to work itself loose in the initial startup and vibrations and whatnot. So, and remember that this is reverse thread. Mainly just so that's not dry metal on metal. Put a little bit on the outside of the spring too. You know. Remember, this piece had to come out of the old brake handle. It's gonna go in there. Alright, this is kind of a trick to get it to sit right, but it's also tough to activate that. But this pin that I didn't really know what it was for is to stop this, and then pulls up into that position, and this locks into that little groove there. This pin goes in there. This clip sits all the way at the back. There's a ridge up here as well, but it doesn't clip up there. It clips all the way down there. And that's how the whole thing sits. Basically, I just clamped this, pulled it back, got that in there, put this pin in here, and pulled this back to put the spring all the way back and sit that in the right spot. Then I could put that clip in. Then everything works. Alright, time to sharpen the chains. So sharpening chains is kind of like art. You ask 5 different people and they'll give you 20 different opinions. But the way I like to do it is line up the wheel with the way the chain is already ground. You can change the angle if you want, but I try to match it as best I can. And you just want it to touch because we're not going to, set it here and grind down through the top. We're going to come in from the side and see how this handle moves side to side just a little bit. What we're going to do is just bump it and just ever so slightly sharpen that edge. We're not going to take any more metal off than we have to. And also, I like to hold it with my hand. I know that's getting really close to the wheel there, but holding, see how this moves back and forth, and then there is a clamp that you can use to pinch this. Moved it, but you can pinch the chain, but it doesn't always hold it. It still kind of wobbles sometimes. And so what I do is I try to hold that up and down as best I can so that every single tooth comes by and I know it's going to be in the same spot. It doesn't like get kicked over, or one grabs and gets cut slightly different, and then you get different angles on all your teeth, and then your chain pulls one way or the other. So that's the way I like to do it. This chain doesn't need it, but if you needed to, and maybe like you hit a rock or something and you took a chunk out of a tooth, then you can come in and grind a little bit more to straighten all the teeth out and get them to the same length and same sharpness and everything, same angle. But again, you don't want to like come in here and just take it all off in one go, because then you're going to heat the chain up or the tooth up too much, and you might lose some strength out of it. And so what you want to do is just take off a little bit at a time, come in like that amount, and then if that's not enough, come by and do a second pass and take that in a little more, and then a little more, and just keep doing that. So yeah, that's the way I do it, and my chains come out pretty sharp. They cut straight and they last a long time, and that's really all I care about. Before I get started, I like to take a paint pen or a Sharpie or something. In this case, a paint pen, because that's what I got on hand. Just make a little mark on my first tooth. That way I know where I started. And I'll normally take and look at the tooth, look at the actual pattern that's being cut on the edge, just to make sure I like the contact pattern, and then if I do, I move to the next tooth and just keep doing that. But notice how I'm only going back and forth. I'm not actually like coming down on the tooth and grinding my way into it. I'm just coming down away from the tooth and then moving the grinder into the tooth and just grinding ever so slight amount I need off of it to sharpen it. And so doing it this way also, it helps cut down on the heat generated on the tooth, so you're not burning and bluing the tooth, but at the same time you're not wearing your disc down as much, and so everything just lasts longer doing it this way. And you can almost see the contact pattern of the disc on the tooth as you go back and forth. You can watch where the sparks originate from. There's some up on the high side and then some down on the low side. You can tell, as you move it back and forth, what is actually contacting.